my point about the Manila Times loud and clear. They are a traitor to the Philippine people. They will lie about China and America in a heartbeat. And it kind of ticks me off that they try to use the Filipino people in some kind of persuasive argument that the West is bad, that somehow that you should love China, right? Even though the Philippines is prominent Christian, even though the Philippines are loving people. But some of the stuff that they tell is just straight up unbelievable BS. So we're going to go into a few things here after we read the article. In the past decade, the world has increasingly witnessed a trend in the East that is rising and the West is declining. In spheres of economy, security, and disclosure power, Western countries, particularly the United States, plagued by internal woes, suggesting that, China isn't plagued at all, which we're going to get into everything wrong, right? Have sought out the old path of passing the buck and instigating turmoil elsewhere to ease their own pressure. Like China's never instigated anything. That's another thing that they never really talk about. This is the same newspaper that said they should just give the islands here in the Philippines to China. Matter of fact, they should just surrender Manila to China. If Manila Times had their way today, that's exactly what they would do. China, the representative of the emerging countries, is proposing new solutions to the global problems that they usually cause. By advocating win-win development, fascinating consulting and reconciliation, and proposing a balance of an effective security mechanism, China has strived to build a community with shared future of mankind. Yeah, tell that to the Filipino fishermen, tell that to Vietnam, Thailand, and all the other people that are having to deal with China in their waters. That's just the waters. We won't even get after what they were doing in Africa illegally. So, in the interview with Global Times, Peter Walker, a commentator on China-U.S. relationship, the author of Powerful, Different, Equal, Overcoming Misconceptions, the Difference Between China and U.S., says that in China, a mediocrity contributes to China's achievements as best, as brightest, has always aspired to the government service. He also dismissed Western misinterpretations, such as the Chinese people are very unhappy and the government has not been serving them. We're going to get into that too, something that Manila Times will lie about and refuses to get into, right? So, you have visited China more than 80 times. What do you think the change of China over the past decade? My business at China really goes back probably 20 years. Anybody who visits China frequently as I did can't help but impressed by how infrastructure has changed and how effectively things get done, right? Which is another BS lie. I think the talent in the Chinese government is undeniably very strong, because if you go back to Confucian values, the best and brightest always aspire to the government service, not to the business. Okay. In the U.S., the best and brightest aspire to the business and make more money, not to serve the government. In China, the Communist Party is made up of especially the most senior levels, very high educated and experienced people who make long-term decisions in terms of investment. So investing in cutting-edge technology, in terms of energy and microchips and renewables, all those things, China has made 10, 20 years to the commitments, and you can do that grievance model where you have a different parties coming and changing direction. So in China, it's very good executing things. I spent a lot of time in my book with people who are involved in a 5-year planning process, and it's very thorough planning process is done, which is top to bottom up, syndicate, and very industrial province if you agree to direction and goals, right? So when China sets out to deliver strong economic growth to make advances in science because they set out to do so, they put resources behind it to do so, and they deliver. So I can't even get into most of this stuff. So we're going to talk about everything wrong with this article. You can read this rest of this BS to yourself. Just make sure you get a bottle of Tylenol ready and maybe a bottle of alcohol to try to get you through this. So we're going to go through just see how well the Chinese government works with its people. How's that sound? It said the Chinese people work well with the government, right? The government just takes care of their people. Because of so much corruption in China, because of unbelievable corruption in their ranks, a lot of people died in China because of this, right? 4 people just killed on December 19th in Fujian province, right? By a bridge collapse. Chinese bridge collapse caught on camera. Chinese made bridges collapse in another region. Chinese made bridge collapse 1,000 stranded. Chinese bridge collapse kills 3. You can go through this all the way back for years to come. So there's another one that looked at all the major bridges collapses made in China. 37 bridges collapses in 5 years. That's another thing you could look at. So yeah, Chinese government, the best and brightest out there, right? So in China, they have this thing that if there's a dam is going to bust and they warn the people, there's a responsibility that they have to pay. But if there's no warning and they release the water, don't tell anybody, they can say it's an act of God and they don't have to pay for anything, right? So China's been having to deal with a lot of floods like everybody else, and they're dealing with droughts. But unfortunately, it gets a lot worse because in China, there is no government aid for flood victims. They might come and rescue you, but you're on your own. There is no aid in China. And Three Gorges Dam, I think, is about empty right now. Some of these stores are a little bit old, a year or two, but some are brand new. So yeah, there's been a lot of floods. A lot of people have lost houses. But we're going to get into whether or not the Chinese government helps or doesn't help their people. We'll try to help Manila Times solve this issue that they think China is so great, since apparently they seem to be a little bit lost on their article. Chinese social media, a lot of times when you post anything bad about the government, they'll get rid of you instantly. They just banned a boy. He was a YouTuber, or not a YouTuber, equivalent to YouTube, and he said that President Xi was fat, so they got rid of him, right? And people go on social media often for flood victims in China, right? So at least 33 people died there in 3 days. The Weibo social media platform connected people were struck in danger. However, some posts were mentioning people being trapped or asking for help have been removed. So these people are begging for help. What do? They removed it because they don't like the Chinese government put in a predicament where they look bad, right? So many people with tales of horror pleaded for online. In response, thousands of people on social media directed their Weibo posts to emergency rescue teams so that they know where they were. When news emerged that some trains were being stranded after all rails had become submerged, people put it together a list of each train resources passengers need. So people also helped to organize the streams of information, right? So 200 million views as a doctor, social workers, minded woman that changed their sanitary pads frequently. I don't understand. I don't want to get into that part. But yeah, so people are having to beg for help. Government's getting rid of it. There is no really help. They come help rescue them, but that's it. There is no aid. What's even worse is that I don't like Epic Times, but they did write a good article at one time here. After more than a month since the devastating flood in July, in the Hunan province, residents are struggling to get displacement subsidies and maximum $162 per person. Ooh, that's a big deal. Heavy rainfall poured down on July 17th. 1,000 locals gathered in front of government office complexes asking officials for compensation. Help us. Help us get our lives back together, right? But the Chinese Communist Party, mayor of Weihu, I think I said that wrong, told representative residents to leave, and she did not offer any timeline. So basically, there is no help. The government doesn't help you. Matter of fact, I think there was a corruption article about even the Salvation Army there, how it doesn't help anybody, how that's just used for corruption on some officials, right? But like I mentioned before, if you're a Christian, He's afraid of you. He doesn't like Jesus at all. He doesn't understand why people worship Jesus and not him. He has a God complex, and that's a serious problem, something Manila Times will never be honest about. In the recent deadly floods in the same province we just talked about, according to China Aid, the Bureau of Ethic and Religions Affairs recently issued an order, phone, banning Christians participating in flood relief. Does that sound like a government that cares about their people? You're going to stop people from donating to you? That's kind of sad, man. That's really, a matter of fact, that's kind of pathetic. But according to Manila Times, who's a free article newspaper supposed to be in Manila, they don't ever post about how many people are Catholic here. This is a 90% Catholic country. What if they told the truth about that they're being banned from donating because of their religious beliefs? Does that sound like the best and brightest the Chinese have to offer? Or does that sound really stupid to everybody else with an average IQ or higher? And so while the people are sitting there asking, hey, can we get a little help? Can we get assistance from this great government that's supposed to be the best and brightest? Manila Times just posted an article how China was so great, even though they're not helping people. And so while their people are starving, out of a home, don't have a place to go, don't have a future, well, guess what? The rich over there are just flaunting their wealth. And by the way, by the rich, I mean the CCP itself, the Chinese government.
The phenomena of flaunting wealth in China is contagious. This was demonstrated multiple times last month. What is likely to be the golden line of the year in 2022 is this sentence: "My dad's revenue from corruption in a day is more than what all of you earn in a year."
They even brag about corruption. Corruption in China is such a huge problem. We're going to get into it at the end of this video here. But yeah, It's a shame that the best and brightest, they let their kids go purse shopping. You know, screw the people. Let's go purse shopping. That's more important. Thing that's been happening in China because of their failure of the COVID programs that they got. They have the zero COVID strategy, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you're talking to somebody that believes you should wear a mask and get a good vaccination, right? So in the process, that people, when they go on these vacations and stuff like that, a lot of them got trapped on this island because a few people got COVID. And there is no assistance for these people. There's no food, there's no cash, there's nowhere for them to go. And you know what? People get a little angry. But according to Manila Times, China is great in every single way, right? So let's see how great China is. Yeah, keep in mind, Manila Times just said, America's in turmoil, China isn't. China's great. Jeez. Manila Times, you're a freaking joke, right? Oh yeah, it gets a lot worse. Another thing that China is really trying to do is trying to get veterans not to protest because they don't take care of their veterans over there. They don't have a veterans program like they do in America. And bad as things get in America, it's 1,000 times better than what China's ever doing. And veterans are the biggest feared group over there because these people are supposed to be trained. And the veterans in China, I think, hate Chinese government more than anybody. And they have been trying to protest for a while now, but unfortunately, you know, they try to shut it down using, ironically, the military. So once again, Manila Times is full of crap. China's definitely in turmoil more than any other country on earth. And to sit there and even write an article about that stuff, it's just sick, right? It's just sick. Sick, disgusting stuff what's going on in Manila Times. Because the CCP is so corrupt that every single piece of land is owned by the CCP. And what happens a lot of times is when they do construction, they ask people to prepay, right? And I've seen that trying to start here in the Philippines. I don't think it's caught on too much, and it shouldn't. And part of the problem is these buildings never get finished. And people started protesting in China, and they had to send tanks in. And here's some of the people protesting, but in the process, because people stopped paying their bank loans, well, the banks started failing, and they wouldn't let people withdraw money, which is another turmoil coming from China. Of course, Manila Times will never be honest because they're very dishonest. When Jesus Christ comes back, Manila Times, y'all ain't going to heaven. So let's prove Manila Times once wrong again.
To stop repaying the loan. Don't blame me for being heartless, but you are too rascal. Why did the bank release the loan before the building has finished its construction? Even after you went to a non-custodian account, the building is not yet completed. Where has the money gone? This time, if you don't resume work, we don't repay the loan for 1 day. There is absolutely no compromise.
The waves of people halting payments on mortgages for unfinished buildings has spread to 25 provinces in China. As of July 16th, the number of developments that have been issued a notice of being forced to stop mortgage payments by...
And that goes into this right here.
In July, people in Shanghai, China's richest city, saw a number of banks restrict ATMs that usually allow both deposits and withdrawals. Customers are left with one feature to either deposit or withdraw cash, but not both. According to reporters from the Shanghai Morning Post, in addition to the Agricultural Bank, the field assessment of 20 bank ATMs of 14 leading banks found that only 5 function normally, 7 have restricted functions, some have shortened hours, and more...
Plain when I said China brought out tanks on these protests when people stopped paying their loans for these unfinished homes. And you don't blame them. Why are you going to pay for something you can't utilize? You can't move in. You can't do nothing. The people making the homes totally stopped production. What are you paying for? You can't blame them for that. But because they didn't pay, the banks started going back on their loans. There's no more money for ATMs. And China might run out of money quicker than any other country on earth right now. China's looking at a global debt. And they might collapse the same way Russia did back in the 90s.
Next leader, China is suffering under the current one. who, as things stand, will continue the next term. Xi Jinping's China is a saga of nightmares. We told you about their banks in crisis. 4 banks in China recently failed. Depositors fear they could lose their life savings. They have been protesting. Guess what the government did? Unleashed military tanks. You know what they say about history repeating itself? China, protesters, tanks. Look at these images.
Yep, folks. Like Manila Times said, West, they're in turmoil. China, they have their bright and great future going. I bet you will never once read an article by Manila Times that ever talked about any of this stuff going on, because Manila Times was dishonest when it comes to China. They're extremely dishonest when it comes to China. And I don't understand Manila Times and the corruption that's going on with you guys. I don't understand why you guys think it's okay to write these articles, to print these articles, to try to get the Filipino people to switch sides. Especially when the Filipino people don't have to pick a side. America don't want you to surrender to them. America just wants to be friends with you guys, mostly anyway, right? America will come to your defense. America doesn't want to invade this country. Is there bad Americans? Yeah, nowhere near like China. We don't like bad Americans in America. We try to get rid of that riffraff. But that's one thing about American laws. They held intact. When Trump tried to take over America last January 6th, America's laws, they held. What kind of law is this that China's having? I'm telling you right now, Manila Times, you're playing with fire and you're too stupid to realize what's going on. You keep writing these articles, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. You can either continue being stupid, Manila Times, or you can grow up. It's your choice. Hopefully one day you grow up. But right now, the Filipino people, they think they want to be free. I don't think they want any part of what's going on with China right now. Ain't nobody want buildings collapsing, bridges collapsing, unfinished homes, droughts, floods. Some of it's from global warming. Some of it's just from corruption. Chinese government's corrupt as all hell. They're running out of money over there. The people are unhappy. They don't like the government. They're being kept lockdowns. They're not being fed. They're not giving any, distributive aid. They're not helping their people. So how in the world could you even write an article like that? It's because you're sick in the head and you got the devil working for you. Grow up, Manila Times.